executive session. Need a vote to, motion to reconvene, or?
You don't need to reconvene.
All right, so we, so, next thing on the docket is the approval of minutes. So we have the minutes from, any questions on the minutes from January 7th, reorg, regular, executive, or the public release of the executives?
Just one comment, Mr. Mayor. We should
Explain what we did in
What we did
executive.
executive and the action may or may not be taken.
Well, no, we'll be taking
We'll be
it.
taken.
So we did have a conversation in executive session. Again, we had an executive session last Saturday related to board member appointments. We've got a lot of positions open. We had a lot more applications than we do open positions. So we reached agreement on most of the positions. There are still a couple that are going to remain open for now. And that's where we stand. So, we have the minutes from January, the reorg, regular, executive, and then those for the public release. Were there any questions about that?
No, so we resolve the redaction issue?
Yeah, there was one of the, Chris had responded to my email, one of them showed no redactions on it. We needed some. But I got the new file today in PDF format, and it showed redaction, so I was okay with it after that, those redactions were made. All right, can I get a motion for approval of minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Managers report.
The first item, at the time this was written, was the status of the LEAF program. The program's ongoing, crews are now in Zone 5, but obviously with the recent snow, it's been delayed. Again, we spent a lot of time over the last week attending to the roads. But as soon as we can, we'll get back at the leaves and try to finish up the program. So after Zone 5, Zone 1, and then we go back to 2 and 3 to finish up. Snow operations, brining. Council's aware that I've been looking into brining operations. Brining is a pre-treatment of the roadways as opposed to salting. Following, so you can salt and pre-treat, but what brining does is a liquid form, and it's 23.3% saturation of water. So once it's made and it's applied to the roadway, it is active immediately. It acts as a barrier. Brining can be done up to 72 hours in advance of a storm, and what we're looking at would allow us to get out ahead of the storm, get into the neighborhoods and the cul-de-sacs, and reverse our priority system. So typically right now, when we do attend to the roads after a storm, we hit the major arteries, collector roads. The theory being, if we can't get to every road, if you can get to those roads, which can get out to the county road. Now, granted, we have some issues with our county roads in Medford, and we're trying to address that with the county. But then get it from the county system to get to the state system before we can get into the side streets and the cul-de-sacs and the like. By and when we get there, typically the roadways or the snow has already been packed down by traffic, and there's no barrier. It's already stuck. So by the time the plows come around, the plows are popping up over top and not able to push it. If you look at some of the towns around us, especially the rural towns with no water systems, they can plow with metal blades down to the ground, to the pavement, because they don't have manholes to deal with and things of that nature. So there are different variables that go into this. But by brining, we believe we'll be able to pre-treat in advance and reverse the process. We'll hit all the cul-de-sacs, the neighborhood streets, and all that, work our way out leading up to the storm. When the storm hits, we reverse back to the typical way we do it. But by the time we get to the neighborhood streets, the plows should be able to push because their barrier is there, and it allows the snow underneath not to adhere and stick and compact. So we've been looking at how we're going to do this. There is an investment of funds. We're probably looking at about a $100,000 investment between the making of it and the application of it. So we're looking at also where we could locate this, and council's aware I've identified this utility plant. The reason we've identified the utility plant is a couple variables. You need water, and it's out of the pinelands, so we don't need to run a pipe because the water's already there. The electric's there, and it sits between two county roads, 541 and Church Road. We already have verbal commitments from 3 other municipalities to buy it from us if we go this route, which was an important thing to help offset our costs going forward. The machine can make, initially we'll have 2 6,100 gallon containers, which have brine in it. Medford alone will need about 10,000 gallons. And you'll ask, well, how do you sell it? The others. The spreading units are only a maximum 1,000 gallons, which takes 15 minutes to fill. So our 2 trucks would fill first, go, and then basically get in line. As those tanks are coming down, this thing's already making more. And you can add on containers. So, so again, we're looking at this. Unfortunately, it's the tail end of this year. This is my first year here. I've been here since May of 11 that I've had snow to be able to assess how the town's been doing things. We also have a new public works director joining us in the middle of February who has brine experience as well. So, you know, things are still fluid and in transition. I think council has been very supportive of us revisiting the way things have been done in Medford. Plus, given our resourcing, we do have limited equipment and we have reduced manpower. This past storm, though, we had a couple more per diems, which allowed us to get out. We ran it through the emergency OEM coordinator, Jeff Wagner, I think that's all Jeff. Jeff ran it, did a very good job with it, and the staff was out there. They're doing the best. They're getting around it, and you know, we'll see what tonight brings. Hopefully, we're in the 1 to 3, and you know, but I think brining is ultimately the way we're going to go as far as trying to deal with this. While there is an investment, there is also eventually a cost savings. When you brine, you reduce your salt cost by 1/3 typically, and the amount of fuel you'll use should back down because current operations, when we say 225 miles of road in Medford, when you're salting and plowing, that could equate to upwards of 1,000 miles. Because some roads will require 2, 3, 4 passes. Could, you know, depending on the width. So with brining and pre-treating in advance, the sprayers, you can do typically 1 pass on a small neighborhood street, and on a road like Hartford, it could take 2 passes. Or, depending on traffic, it could take 1 pass. The sprayer can spray the whole width of the road. So if traffic's light and we can get a truck to go up it at normal speeds, it's, again, driving around in traffic and just applying the liquid. So we would see some offset there eventually when we go this route. So just, again, we're still, the last thing we're doing right now is we're still evaluating where on the utility plant. The brine will not play well with the chemicals of the treatment, so we have to look at the utility plant has a separate stormwater system, which the brine could flow into per DEP regulations. So we're looking at the best spot to put it right now, but the infrastructure's there, the water's there, the electric's there. The staff can do a lot of the work once we purchase the equipment. It requires like a small concrete pad to be built to sit this thing on. These are things that we can do to help offset the cost too. But that's kind of where we're heading. I think I've been keeping council abreast of this, but there's a little more detail as we still investigate it more and more.
The 3 other townships that have indicated they are interested going forward in purchasing the brine from us once it's produced. They, you know, certainly if they're just purchasing the brine, they're not assisting in the purchasing of the equipment. If they were interested in adding one of the additional storage tanks, is that something that would reduce that?
Yeah,
cost?
yeah. I don't want to get into all the particulars because we're going to sit down and do former and the locals. But although they're buying brine, they will not. The cost to make brine is typically 10 to 15 cents per gallon. We're probably sell it for higher than that, and the theory is, and I've seen these models, in fact, I've been a part of these models, the additional cost goes towards the infrastructure. So although they may, right now, they may not come with a check and say, here's $5,000.
And that's
We're gonna
right.
pay higher than what you're making it for to contribute into that infrastructure.
But with what we're purchasing, the 100K investment, that'll support us and those theoretical 3 other townships that are interested.
Yes, because again,
Okay.
what happens is, we're planning to go with 2 spreading units. Once our spreading units are filled, they're gonna go out and drive around.
Right.
So the next vehicles come in, there's a chip, you put the chip in, we know exactly, it's like a key, how much
Right.
is being taken. While these tanks are being drawn down, this stuff's is making more again, so then you switch to the next thing. So yeah, we are aware of the capacity kind of things we're dealing with, but it is expandable if we needed to.
And that's what I'm saying, if we find that just operationally, we've got to add another tank to support
Yes.
other entities, I think at that point, if the initial outlay is, you know, the unit itself and then an additional storage tank, that if we have to add tanks in the future, it's going to be based on their ability to help with that infrastructure.
Yeah, I can tell you
I don't
one
mind
town,
the initial cost and recouping that cost over a longer term, but any additional at that point, it seems to me it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then they could buy it for a lesser charge because they.
well, I can tell you one
Put the tank in
town
place.
won't go that far yet, only because there's towns in between us. And some of those towns have not shown any interest that I've reached out to. But if one of those towns decided to buy their own brine making, this town would be closer to them. So right now, they're going further. They're actually going almost to one of the river communities to buy the brine. We're closer. So
Right.
they're gonna save just alone on fuel
Sure.
costs of coming to pick up. I've also reached out to the county. I have not heard back from the county. And again, while we're talking about snow, I know there's been a lot of stories about Evesham and Tuckerton Road and the county. We do not have the capacity to plow the county roads right now. The way the county models work is that they reimburse you. It's not it's what our cost actually would be. So take our snow budget divided by the number of miles, and that's what typically you're gonna get reimbursed. If we attend to the county roads, it's gonna take what resources we have off the neighborhood streets, because we will need to, those roads are more priority than the smaller roads, because again, the theory, you gotta keep those roads to get to the state highway system.
Right.
So typically, you put a higher priority to them, and I can tell you from my previous town I worked in, it became a frustration point with staff and the community. They wanted their county roads plowed, because most people drive them, but we were slow to get into the neighborhoods because we're spending not 4 passes on some of these county roads, 6 passes, trying to get these larger roads opened and keeping on them during the event. So I have reached out to the county though, because with brining, I've thrown it out there, I'd be happy to brine, because you're just driving down the road applying a liquid. And they still be responsible for the plowing of the roads, but again, the theory is if they're having a delay getting out to us because of their resources, by the time they get there, that snow's not packed down, it can be pushed off a lot easier. So there's a lot going on. Again, we're doing the best we can with what we have, but we're also looking at the way we've done it and how maybe we can improve on that given our resourcing and going forward and trying to, attend to our community. But I did drive around a few municipalities this past storm for comparison's sake. And again, if you're going to compare apples to apples, that's one thing. If you're going to look at certain towns and the way they're doing it, don't just base it on Tuckerton Road or Hopewell Road. Go into some of the neighborhoods and then come back, and have the discussion, because overall, people were able to get where they had to go for the most part. I know it's frustrating. I know it's slow going. I've always said, my opinion is we live in a society that wants to do 50 and a 25 all the time. And with a snowstorm, look, you gotta go a little slower. Just for a few days, let's let Mother Nature sometime, well, unfortunately Mother Nature isn't cooperating right now with the cold weather. But yesterday we got, it spiked up. So we do watch those variables too. What's Mother Nature gonna do the day after the snowstorm? Is it heating back up? and how do we take advantage of that? So a lot of variables going into it, but I just want the community to know we are actively looking at this. It's not like we're just content with what we're doing. We're not content. We want to improve what we're doing given the resources we have, and how can we make it better for the community and maybe attend to it a little quicker. So, any other questions? Okay, next item is, this is an initial discussion. We'll add it if council wants to go a little further with it. We were approached late last year from a couple private property lien holders. These are people that have tax liens on properties that I call dysfunctional. Fortunately, they bought the liens, they're paying the taxes, but these properties may be abandoned houses, abandoned businesses that aren't really doing anything for the community. Some of these people want to go to foreclosure, but the foreclosure process can take upwards of 18 months to 2 years in some instances. The statute allows towns to create an ordinance for abandoned and foreclosed properties. Basically, towns that go through this process, there's a public official assigned who has a database of these properties, signs off that the house or the business is in fact abandoned. It allows a lien holder to then expedite the foreclosure process. This is a way to expedite that process because the town is supporting the program, trying to get these properties, again, get the property free and clear to then be able to be sold or do something different with. So we were approached by at least two lien, both in the village. Mr. Norman looked at it and had some legitimate concerns from an operational standpoint because it would put a burden on staff. I talked to the staff that would typically do the zoning and construction. Both feel that in Medford, they could handle this in their normal day-to-day travels. So we've looked at Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill Township has an ordinance, a lot bigger community, obviously. There is a fee associated with it because the taxpayer shouldn't absorb all this for a private lien holder. Although, so there is a fee to it. And whether or not council wants to go that direction, we believe from a staffing point, we can absorb this and do it in-house and provide this service to those who inquire. And again, there would be a fee, we would recommend a fee associated with that. But if council doesn't want to go that direction, then I'm not going to pursue it any further. We've done enough homework to at least come to you and say, if you want to have a further dialogue, we're ready to have that dialogue. It's pretty basic, the statute's pretty clear on what has to happen. There is some notice requirements, but it's all procedural stuff. And in staff talking to the Cherry Hill folks who do it, staff's confident it's really not going to be that onerous. We're not as big a town, we don't have as many of these properties. And if we're active with it, it maybe reduces that what we have.
I mean, I understand the idea of being able to streamline that process. I don't want to see this as any kind of revenue stream.
Well,
other than you're keeping into good play our existing rentals. I mean, that part of it.
well, I'm going to disagree respectfully because why should taxpayers, bear the burden of a private investor, a lien holder? So I believe that should be a reasonable.
That's a great, you want to set the fee at what the costs are, or basic costs.
Not as a revenue stream.
No, right, but the cost shouldn't be borne all,
No,
it should be
right.
subsidized.
No,
That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
The numbers that I saw from the Cherry Hill.
Yeah, well, again, that's Cherry Hill, yes.
Well,
And I did advise staff, council, that would be one of the issues for this council is what a fee is going to cost. So if we want to break it down, I'd have to go a little further as to what kind of time commitment and come up with a cost model.
Like in Cherry Hill, that $5,000, what is that charge? When is that charge?
As I understand it, it's a 3-step process over 3 years. It's not all a one-time hit. So I'd have to delve a little
Is that
further
on every property?
on those who come in to do that process, as I understand it, yes. Ms. Borstad's the one who investigated, so I could have her come to, the next meeting if council wants to discuss it further.
The larger fees are more prevalent in the big cities where the landlords are coming from outside of town. and
Yeah.
Cities are looking for.
Yeah, and we talked about that internally. It would have to be
What does
reasonable.
the fee represent, and what is it charged? When is it charged? Is it charged when your property's vacant I mean, I don't understand.
I think, I have.
Cherry Hill, I believe, is more
Once every 3 years.
Yeah, there's a process, and
For every property in town?
Not every property, every vacant property.
And when they deem it to be abandoned or vacant,
Okay.
they're under the statutory requirements.
Okay. But doesn't that involve being behind in taxes as well?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things you gotta think of, if the property owner's got a vacant property, and then you're gonna hit him with a big fee on top of it, I mean, he's not collecting revenue from rents, I mean, that's the other side of it.
It seems unlikely that you'd be able to collect that if the property is.
Well, let's take the one, for example, the ones that approached us. They have the lien, they control the lien, they want to expedite the foreclosure so that they can flip that and I believe flip it or do something with it. So
Who's
again,
charged the fee? Is the fee get charged to the,
lien holder, the person who comes in.
so it gets put onto the lien? So when the lien.
Yeah, I don't know if
gets-
it's done that way at Cherry Hill or if they just do it through the person who holds the lien certificate.
So
You're still paying.
the new owner.
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and so, again, I don't believe that taxpayers should bear that, but again, I'm not saying if you believe that Cherry Hills is out of line, that's council's prerogative. I'm just saying, this is one of those cost of doing business type fees. If we implement this, there is a benefit to the community, it's to get that property free and clear and allow that that lien holder to do something
Well,
with
it seems like in their case, it's just if it's vacant, and it's not even whether or not there are liens that haven't been collected or anything.
it. Yeah, again,
They're charging buildings just for being vacant.
what we would do from here is provide you with the statute and all that.
It seems like it's a penalty as opposed to something that bears any rational relationship to the actual cost. I mean, just charging $5,000.
Yeah, I can't speak to Cherry Hill specifically, they're one of the towns that have the program in place. And they're using
I think it's a
it.
worthwhile program, and I'll be in favor of going forward.
But we can package it up, the statute, we can put a draft together and I can have Kathy.
Looking at it, I just want to make sure the fees are in line with.
Yeah, and we talked about that internally. Just making sure that this wasn't out of control, but that we were recovering the cost of doing that service, that's all.
All right, so, and you may not have this information readily available, ballpark, do we have a sense of how many properties fit that bill today in Medford?
No. No, we do know there are some, because we've identified them from just driving around.
And as with any change, there's always that initial ramp up. So
Yeah.
we're looking at it from, you know, we're gonna pass an ordinance that says this is the way we're gonna do business. And without bringing in outside resources to do it and putting it on staff, how much staff time is gonna go to that initial ramp up as opposed to, you know, what it looks like going
Yeah,
forward.
again,
I'm in favor of it.
No, I
I
know.
really am, but I'd like to have a better understanding of what falls out the apple cart.
yeah,
initially.
according to,
The statute says that the property has to be vacant for six months, and there has to be delinquent taxes due for that period of time, or it's just the project just wasn't finished. the building's not finished.
Or what- And again, another question you may not have the answer to. If a property is deemed abandoned, there's a lien holder, you know, it's pretty cut and dry, it's simple. If a lien holder, you know, has a tenant in there and they're simply not paying the rent, you know, and then the lien, and then the building
It has to be
owner,
vacant.
it has to be
Yes.
vacant, right?
it's abandoned property statute.
Just abandoned
Yeah,
property.
that's what's-
Right. I just want to make sure we're.
And like I said, I did talk to staff, and I said, well, well, when they go out to do their inspections, this would just be another inspection on their thing, there's a checklist, and they sign off. The initial database, we talked about cross-referencing what we're aware of as far as private liens So first we identify those. Then of those, we would start to determine what's abandoned. So we can narrow down the database. Once the database is created, and the notice, there is a notice process, once that's all done, that's when staff's feeling is, it's just becomes part of our routine. So we'll package it all up and put it back in front of council. And again, we'll try to put some numbers to what our cost would be to have staff administratively process it for purposes of discussion. Last two items I have are approvals for, one for a new EMS member, Station 258, Benjamin and Allen, and the second is Reed Rec, new fire member, Station 251.
Either of those individuals here? Go ahead, Louis.
So voice vote for approval. Has everyone any objections to either of those nominations? Voice vote approval for Benjamin Allen and also Reed Rec for volunteer EMS for Benjamin Allen and Reed Rec for the fire station 251. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion items. I need, thank you, Councilor Pace mentioned to me that the Boy Scout, Jake May, Troop 26, who received a citizen's.
No, he's here.
Oh.
He's working on it.
Oh, you're working on it, oh.
Stand up, Jake.
Where's Jake?
Stand up.
What?
Thank you.
Hi, Jake, thanks for coming out. So he's working on his citizen's merit badge, so he's here tonight with the council event, good for you. So I acknowledge Jake for showing up. Second thing is a discussion item I asked the manager to put on there. One of the things that I really want to try to do is be clear in communicating our priorities to the community, so they know where we're headed. I think a lot of what we've had to do in the first couple of years has been largely reactive. So, you know, we've got the opportunity now to sort of set the table long term. And I'm curious what the priorities are for other members of council. I don't want to have that list of priorities tonight, but I'm hoping that next week, since we do meet in another week, everybody can come back with a few ideas. There's a really good possibility that we're going to have similar things on our list. And that, I think, will be one of the things that we can use to decide what our priorities are going to be for next year. So I'm just asking that next week people bring ideas and what their specific goals are for the year. Anybody any comments about that? Does that sound like something that works?
You don't mind now?
You can give now if you want. I'll ask you to repeat it.
I'll wait.
We'll wait. All right, so now we'll move into the public comment. Open up the meeting to public comment. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. When you approach the microphone, if you're interested in making a comment, make sure you give your name and address for the record. Is there anyone in the public who wants to make any comments? Seeing none, can I motion to close the comment? Public?
I'm sorry, I didn't make the name.
Okay.
Thanks. Hi, Al Finkelstein from 107 Pinestone Trail. I have a question about some correspondence that I received at my house, and that I think a number of residents have talked to me about. They've also received at their home. It looked very much like official correspondence from the town. And the correspondence, what the correspondence did was it promoted some informational sessions on retirement and on healthcare. And in this correspondence, it requested a donation. I think it required a donation to the town, and the donations were for specific projects, I guess, in the town. And it was very curious. It really looked like official correspondence. It had township employees' names and contact information on this correspondence. It looked like this event was going to be held in township property, and it was very curious to me. My question basically is, why is the town asking for, or how did this come to be, first of all, I guess, and I'm not sure. I've gotten some preliminary answers. I think Mr. Schultz was...
You're asking me for the origins of a deceptive marketing campaign? I have no idea.
Yeah, okay, well, that's exactly my question. I don't know either, but since the town is involved, and the town's sort of implicated, I'd like to see the
Implicated,
town.
in what way are we implicated, is the
Well,
township?
the township's name is all over it, and it matches a number of residents, and in some respects, I mean, whether the town,
With respect, are you here as a resident or the MBA
I'm here as a
director?
resident.
Because I responded to the MBA, which you asked as a director for a response from the town.
Right.
I responded and spent a great deal of time on this. The township was approached by an outside vendor, okay? The vendor, and Ms. Portacallis is here, the vendor had requested to do a program for the town. It was run through the Neighborhood Services Advisory Committee, which kicked it back and said, no, we think we have businesses in town to do this. At that point, that was the Wednesday before the flyer was out, I believe. Ms. Portacallis on that Thursday spoke to the vendor that they could not have the town's involvement. We were not going to do anything of it. I was in on Friday that week, before, again, you communicated with Ms. Friedman that, and staff advised that Ms. Portacallis had some type of verbal disagreement with somebody, and that made me aware of it, they usually do. So, at that point, we don't even know the flyer exists,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah,
No, with all due respect, I want to make sure the air is clear, because
I guess
I went through this with the NBA, and
that's fine.
No,
Sure,
but
don't I get my 5 minutes to ask some questions? I'm not clear.
That's fine, finish.
Yeah,
I can finish.
Yes, I mean, I think at this point, and I understand what you're saying.
So what
It
you're
sounds
saying-
like the town really has no desire to be involved.
Just so I'm clear, you had already contacted someone from the town and received a response?
I was through some channels, yes.
Okay, did you?
But the
I
response
was
is
not
a little bit
contacted by,
unsatisfactory.
I wasn't contacted by you.
Okay.
Okay,
No,
so,
that's why I'm here.
so what's your point?
That's why I'm here.
What's the
So-
problem that you have? First of all,
I guess my
why don't you
question
explain
is-
the concept in general?
My-
What
my-
was it that upset you about the flyer?
Well, there's a couple of things that upset me about it. Residents are being asked to pay for information about government programs that
Okay,
are
so-
relative. That's
so-
the first thing.
So you
If I
think
can
that, hold
finish.
on, let me understand.
Yeah.
In this case, you're upset that somebody is putting forth a business proposition and asking for payment in receipt of information.
Yeah.
So it's a consultant that's asking to be paid, you don't like that idea?
No, it's not that they're
What is it
asking
you don't
to
like
pay. It's
about
just that this is information that's available. If the town was involved really in providing information to the constituency, to the residents of the town,
Was the
there are
town
other
involved?
ways of doing it. Well,
Did the flyer say the
It
town was
sure-
providing information to
it
someone?
sure appeared like it.
Why don't you read me the flyer?
I'm sorry, I don't have the flyer.
I've heard Mr. Schultz say that the town was not involved.
I
No,
just heard
that's
that.
true, and I understand that. My concern though is that this flyer is now in the hands of possibly, I don't know how many residents. And it still looks like the town is behind it. And how do the
Behind what?
residents know that the township is not behind it?
Behind what?
Behind the educational program.
So you don't want the town to be involved in an educational
I
program?
have no problem with the town being involved in
Then what's your
educational
problem?
programs. My problem is, why is the town, what is the town doing to communicate to the residents that now received this, what you just described as
Communicate, well, what
false?
would you like us to do? A direct mail program to say,
I-
disregard that direct
maybe-
mail you
maybe
got
just make
6
it
weeks
more-
ago? then-
Maybe if it's just a part of the record of this meeting, that may be sufficient.
I think it's part of the record. The town had nothing to do with this.
Now, but what Mr. Finkelstein suggested is maybe we should put out a nixel or something that says
When
we're
was-
not involved in it. Although,
When
we've
was this
taken
event?
action in-house with Ms. Grossman, the person who wanted to use the town's facilities to do this, to communicate with her how they were going to handle that when people do come in. And Beth, who's handling it, is people.
When was this event supposed to take place?
This week,
What day?
there was a session scheduled for this Thursday, the 30th, and then one for Saturday, for whatever the date is. the
And
first.
where was this supposed to take place?
When we were first approached, like I said.
Where was this supposed to take place?
Originally Cranberry Hall,
Right.
but they.
So
came
it's
in-
not scheduled?
No, they put in, we
Okay.
told Mrs. Grossman that she needed to file a facility use permit, which she did. She filed the application, but the application was not approved. When we finally saw the flyer, and the fact that she had misrepresented the information, and, we denied the permit, and told her she had to make other arrangements. So one of the beneficiaries was to be the art center. So we suggested that she contact the art center. and
That's
see
a
if
private
they can
entity.
use the art- And that's totally out of the township's.
That's not the township.
Right, we don't have any responsibility, any direct relationship or indirect relationship with the facility. And quite frankly, I don't know, which of the things, we just set up arrangements, any registrations that came in via mail have been, Mrs. Grossman has been sending somebody to pick them up, and quite frankly, we've had less than a dozen. We don't
So,
open,
is there any, why is the township receiving?
because the
Because
flyer,
The flyer pointed everybody to the town, and when Mr. Finkelstein contacted Ms. Friedman over the weekend of the one snowstorm, and I reacted to it when I found out, I called Beth on a Sunday night while I'm dealing with a snowstorm because I was ticked off. Okay, and that was communicated, whether he agrees or disagrees.
That, I have no
But
problem
I think
with that.
the issue now is how do we make sure the community understands the town didn't support this? But there's also some misinformation because I don't believe Mr. Finkelstein has the info yet. I communicated back to the NBA president because he originally went through the NBA to me that the town has, over the last few years, supported different variations of partnerships. But in this particular case, we did not go out looking for it and asking for this. So
I guess that's a great,
Why
that's
does
a
it
great
matter
point,
if
and
we
what I'd
did?
like to know a little bit more, and see if it could be disseminated, is like, what is the process that the town is gonna use in the future, if they're gonna pursue these public-private partnerships, what's the process that the town's gonna use to
Well,
develop or to allow these
We've
things
been,
to take
for
place?
the last, at least my time here, and if you come to different township meetings, we've done various agreements with nonprofits. We have at least one agreement with a private entity that has some sponsorship. The town doesn't necessarily go actively looking for it. We've been approached.
I guess what I'm reflecting back on is when the town, the Board of Education, I guess, was using school buses and looking for sponsorship of the school buses, that was really
Okay,
widely
if we do
disseminated.
that, if we do something like that, we have to bid that.
If I had
That's
the
a
school
concession.
board's budget, we do a whole
Well,
lot more.
yeah.
They're
And-
budgeted for public relations, we are not.
Given that it's a government
Well,
entity, it seems like
I
there should
think,
be some
unfortunately, I think
process.
the problem is, when you sent Ms. Friedman a second response, I responded again, and I think that clearly articulates exactly what the
I'm
town
afraid I didn't
does.
see anything
I don't
from
think
you.
I don't know if she's just waiting for the next meeting or not. So-
I'm just trying to understand something. What process do you want us to put in place? A process
Well, I
for
mean,
how
I
people
just-
should approach the town?
Perhaps, or
So
how
you
these
want
things
to
are going to
like-
be,
I mean,
how these things
I
are
think
going to
we
be
did
dealt with.
have a
I mean, is
process.
there a committee that deals with that? 'Cause
Well, I think what happened is, what I just heard is that the township was approached. The idea was directed towards a board who, their priority is to determine appropriate events for the community, falls under that purview and advise the governing body as such.
No, Mayor, let's clarify that. The idea was to support a senior type program. And again, that's why we ran it through them. Is this something we want to offer to senior citizens?
I don't understand the problem.
Well, and do we want to do it through, but the town position was, we have other businesses in town that can offer this.
Well,
We don't need, Mayor,
But why is it incumbent on, hold on a second, if an out-of-town business wants to come in here and run an event, what am I gonna tell them, go away because we already have someone in town who does that?
That's not the point.
Our-
I don't think
our
that's the
idea-
point of what I'm saying at
Just so
all.
you know,
Yeah.
our priority as a governing body is to encourage commerce. And that,
Of course.
that includes businesses within the township.
But when the town is involved, when the town's name is going to be involved, or the town facilities are going to be involved, I think there needs to be a process, I think it needs to be articulated. This is the first I've heard of a board that even reviewed any of these things.
well,
So
that's because the request came in, it wasn't solicited by the board.
But-
The request came in, and it was within the charter of this board to look for programs for the senior citizens.
I don't understand the problem. If you're saying to me that we should turn away businesses because they're out of town and they want to do an event in their
that's
town?
not anything what I said.
So
What
what's the
I
issue?
what I said, and I think I was clear about it, I'd like to see there be a process. I'd like to understand that process a little better, and maybe that's part of what
And-
needs to be done.
And what
just a
I
little bit.
communicated back through Ms. Freeman was that I'd be prepared at the next MBA board meeting, because that's how it originally came through as a board member, that I would be prepared to discuss the different ways the town, the laws, you know, if we have to bid something like a concessionaire type thing, all those things.
We have those things.
Let me, there is a process in place. If you want to hold an event in the township, specifically on township property, there's a permitting process, right?
Right.
So what's the problem? They went through that process, they were rejected because of whatever reason. So what's your issue?
Now my issue is that this letter went out to numerous residents. That's one
Oh,
issue.
this is-
We don't, the town doesn't
I'm
control
not-
what
yeah,
someone
we're not-
sends on a flyer.
Yeah, hold
No,
on,
but-
let me, I'm not in charge of the mail service.
Isn't there the possibility that the town could be, the town is sort of tacitly endorsing this
How am I
business?
endorsing anything?
Because the town's name is all over.
Okay.
The town is accepting.
That doesn't-
It seems to be prepared to
The
accept.
flyer's cut and splice. You can
And when
do
it came to our attention, when we actually saw the copy of the flyer, and that's why Mr. Schultz alluded to the fact, when it was brought to my attention, and without seeing the flyer, but they said, can we have the mail coming to you? I mean, I probably acted way, inappropriately, but expressed my displeasure. Mr. Schultz, I did not come in that Friday because of the ice storm. Mr. Schultz contacted me over the weekend, then scanned and sent me a copy of the flyer.
It's
And
just-
that's exactly what this person
Okay, but here's my question.
These
What process?
these things don't happen, you know.
Now, this
I-
person took advantage of a situation, used the relationship to give her tacit endorsement of the township. We conveyed that to her in no uncertain terms, denied her permit for that very same reason.
All right, but
And then
I
we
just
dealt with
have,
anybody that came in to register for the permit.
so we dealt with that. I don't understand what you're looking for.
I think I was clear about it.
You want us to put a procedure in place that stops people from mailing things out that says the
a clear
township?
procedure, because I haven't seen anything. up
Procedure
to
for
now For how the town is going to be involved in public-private enterprises. That's number one.
Okay,
Two, I don't understand why, especially something that was targeted for seniors, why there'd be a request for payment for information about about government
Not-
programs. To me,
Mr.
to me,
Fingers.
that seems really.
I'm gonna suggest you contact Ms. Grossman and ask her. This was not
Yeah.
anything we did.
Can I-
She
let me-
did
let me
come in.
finish.
And
Let
the
me wrap
only
up this
reason,
conversation.
you know, I know what her response is going to be, but I also know town name is still out there.
Mr.
It's still on
Finkelstein, so you want us to put a procedure in place that prevents people from mailing things out without the township, with the township's name? Because a procedure was in place for the event, and the procedure was followed, and the permits were rejected. Now it sounds like, excuse me, that's my little Peter Brady squeak. Now it sounds like you want us to put a procedure. I don't understand.
There is something called like mail fraud. So if something was done
Okay.
fraudulently.
So we
I
have a
think somebody
retired
now
federal
needs to-
agent sitting in the back by the name of Jack Hartwick. You can go
Great.
talk to him. He knows all the people you can
So
talk
what-
to report someone for mail fraud. If there's mail fraud involved, I suggest you contact the appropriate legal authorities. In this case, I believe that's covered by the United States federal government or the FBI.
Okay,
However, if you're asking me to put in place a procedure that prevents people from sending out a mailer that says the township is behind something it's not, I know of no such procedure that can stop someone from doing that.
I still think the town may have some liability in this issue.
Is that what you
Let
think?
alone- That's what
I
I kind of
disagree
feel.
with you.
I kind of feel the town may want to at least address that, because if residents do get, if there is something that happens to residents, at some point, the town still should at least take some action to make sure that
We
that
have.
doesn't happen.
Mayor, the town has.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public comment section? Seconded, or can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, moving on. Bill list, has everyone had a chance to review? I was gonna say, I was about to recuse myself because I haven't reviewed it. Or is it? We do have one ordinance for first reading. Can I get a motion?
I'll move that ordinance 2014-1, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of property at block 903.02, lot 26.02, also known as 172 Route 70, within the Township of Medford, by donation or acquisition upon certain conditions, be introduced for first reading.
Have a second on that?
Second.
Frank? So, That motion, or rather ordinance 2014-1 has been put forth for first reading. Do we voice vote down or set the hearing? All right, so the public hearing date would not be our next meeting, so we're looking at what, the 18th?
18th of
Okay,
February.
so that'd be, so that we'll set a date for public hearing for ordinance 2014-1 on February the 18th. Can I get a roll call vote for approval? I'm sorry, are there any council comments?
Why don't you have the manager explain exactly where that property is?
Okay.
Although it says Route 70, it's actually on Jones Road between St. Vincent de Paul and the gas station, opposite the old Act, I call it the old Acton Shopping Center. There's a piece of land there that the owner had approached the town. We evaluated it for several different issues, and the Township Council decided to accept the donation.
And how big a parcel is it?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall. It's 8 acres? About 8 acres with some wetlands in it. So it's not overly big, but I don't know how much more detail you want to give me, given some of the moving parts we're still dealing with.
No, just some basic information.
Yeah.
We've all known what we're doing here.
Be donated by a resident for tax purposes.
So we'll set the hearing on that for February the 18th. If you want to learn more, please come out to the hearing. And can we get a roll call vote for approval?
Mr. Beanstalk?
Aye.
Mr. Checkeye?
Aye.
Mr. Pace?
Aye.
Mayor Bolney?
Aye. So that will be on the 18th. Consent agenda resolutions. I want to take Councilman Beanstalk, which ones did you want me to pull out of the consent agenda?
The last two, resolution 32-2014 and 33.
Okay, so there's two that Councilman Beanstalk has requested be pulled out of the consent agenda. I concur with him on that. Are there any other items, any questions about the consent agenda? I'll go through various.
When are we home?
We must vote on them separately.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Resolution 28-2014.
So we're also going to pull resolution 228-2014, for that separately as well. So it's item number 14, 18, and 19. So it's, did you get that, Kathy? It's
Yes.
28, 32, and 33. Any other questions about any of the items on there? Consent agenda resolution. All right. Normally, I'll go through these one by one, and we'll read what we have here. No, I don't have the electronic with me. Just 1 minute. Kathy, do you have paper copies? Because I have electronic, it'll be a little quicker.
I passed them down to you, I think.
No,
You need all of them.
Yeah, all.
Yes, I have all.
I'm a printer and I'll have paper copies, right? They're on the agenda, but I don't have all the names.
15.
Of the various firms. Thank you. Okay. So the first one, resolution 15-2014, appointing risk management consultant for the Burlington County Municipal Joint Fund, that will remain Hardberg. The next one, is Hardberg Associates, right, Hardberg Insurance Company. Next one is resolution 16-2014, appointing the township planner. Again, that will remain the same company as last year, which is Taylor Design Group. Resolution 17-2014, township engineer, that's going to be Dan Guzzi, Guzzi and Associates. Resolution 18-2014, appointing a special utility projects engineer, that is ERI, and that's environmental resolutions, Chris Knoll. Resolution 19-2014, appointing bond counsel. Again, we're remaining with Saul Ewing. And did a good job for us, and This year, we'll probably have some things we have to bond. Resolution 20-2014, appointing the township auditor. This will be the third year for Home and Training. Agreed on that. Resolution 21-2014, affordable housing administrative agent. Yes, we need one of those. We're staying with the same as Triad Associates. Resolution 22-2014, appointing the township labor human resource attorney. Hopefully we won't have as much need for the firm this year, but we will be reappointing Cruzy McDermott, Mastro, and Murphy. Resolution 23-2014, appointing the township attorney. Mr. Norman will remain our attorney. Norman. Resolution 24-2014, appointing a public defender. Mr. Federini will remain our public defender. 25-2014, approving request for final release of performance guarantee for Procacci Development Company Incorporated, Haverhill, to Water Connect SPR 1319WA. Engineers recommended that release. Resolution 26-2014, approving request for final release performance guarantee for Come Alive New Testament Church, Pal Energy, and Solar, SPR 5672F. Resolution 27-2014, authorizing a $25 fee for mailing of tax sale notices for pilot program and electronic tax sale. Mr. Manager, do you want to, it's basically it's a fee to cover our costs.
The tax one?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, we do, it's a way to save actually by doing it this way. What happens in the typical way, that, more traditional way, the tax office would notice the tax sale notices no less than 3 times during a 4-week period, and we absorb most of that cost. This alternative reduces the advertising cost by shifting it to the cost of the tax sale. So those people bidding and things like that absorb part of that cost. Similar, again, trying to shift that burden away from all the taxpayers and applying it to those taking advantage of the tax sale and things of that nature.
Moving on, resolution 28-2014. Oh, no, that's right, we're leaving that out. Resolution 29-2014, appointments to the Neighborhood Services Advisory Committee. Go through, this one we are filling entirely. So we are appointing Bob Gucci to a 1-year term, representing Medford Youth MIA. Sean Ryan, he will be representing the Medford School District. That's a 1-year term. Heidi Freehack, is that how to pronounce it? A 1-year term, representing the Lenape Regional High School District. Denise Pizzoli will be serving a 1-year term, representing the Medford Arts Center. Bill Stouts, Stokes. I've been pronouncing your name wrong. You corrected me last year, so thank you. 1-year term to expire December 31st. Representing the business community, Tom Wright, a 1-year term to expire December 31st, representing the Civic Association. Tom Corby, a 1-year term, representing the Homeowners Alliance. Steve Conger, unexpired balance, and a 3-year term for the at-large representative. And remaining on the board are Alberta Wolf, Bridget O'Hanlon, Frank Swilka, James Geiger, Cheapwood, sorry, Frank. I've asked him before too. I'm not as sharp as I used to be in my 30s. Brian Hinchelwood, Jason Newdell, and Colleen Silver will all be 3 appointments for that board. The next one is Resolution 30-2014, appointments to the Economic Development Advisory Commission. We actually added, correct, seat
Well, no, we're not to amend the ordinance, but yeah, you're gonna have somebody sitting in as a public.
Okay, we have somebody sitting in, and that person. Okay, so we have, for balance of the 3-year term to be expiring, we have Erica Conlon being appointed. Lauren Cochen, is that? Cochen. Cochen, is that correct? Cochen.
Yes.
Will be serving a 2-year term to expire December 31st. And then we've got the remaining members, Paul Fortino, Jim Bennett, Mike Pagnotta, Allison Eckel, Chris Schultz, and then we have, what's the terminology we're using for Jamie?
Well, currently the town manager sits as an ex officio and the planning administrator. Since I wear both hats currently, we're going to consolidate that and create another position. That's what the amendment's going to be.
Okay.
But there is a vacancy.
So as of now, no appointment on that.
Right.
Okay. All right, the next item.
Didn't we have somebody
Council.
on?
That was right.
No.
No, that was, yeah, that was, yes. Yeah, but we had 2 spots open, we had a resignation.
So we filled both of those with
Oh, I thought that was after.
No.
No.
And then we had, kind of wrong, all right, and then appointments to the Environmental Affairs Advisory Committee. Do I have that one here? I'm not sure I have it. There was only one appointment on that one. No, there was 2. Chuck Deal is being reappointed, and then Edward Michalowski is being appointed to a 1-year term. The remaining members of that are Eric Spinner, Robert Lee, Matt Kane, Chris Valentine, Michael Bunks, and
You resigned.
who did?
That's what it was.
That's, yeah, Bunks.
Bunks resigned, okay, so that's
Yeah, we have to fill that spot.
We have
That's what it
a
was.
spot.
And that happened after the.
We're not doing it.
No, we won't be doing that this evening.
No.
All right, so it's one open spot. And then that's it for the, sorry for that lengthy explanation, but that's it for the consent agenda resolution. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the appointments are made. Now it's coming back to 28-2014. Please, do you have any comments from me? Or appointing? Okay, so Paul Dockery, we are replacing our existing prosecutor, and the new person, new applicant. We actually had to go out to bid twice on this because we only received one bid the first time, so we went out second time and decided that Paul Dockery would be the new municipal prosecutor. So can I get a motion for resolution 28-2014?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Councilman Pace will abstain from that. Okay, the next one. Resolution 32-2014, appointments to the planning board members. Now, this, right now, we're leaving at least one seat open, or leaving one seat open on the planning board. So let me read what we have. We have Class 4 member, term to expire December 31st, 2017, Rick Ferrara. Julie Basil Hulk will be appointed as a Class 4 member, term to expire December 31st, 2017. Robert Phelan, Class 4, 4-year term to expire December 31st, 2017. I will be designating Frank Checkeye initially as he'll serve as my designee as a Class 1 manager mayor. And that term expires at the end of this year. For our municipal Class 2 designee, it's George Snyder. We will be appointing for the balance of the year, for the entire year, Councilman or Deputy Mayor Charles Watson. And then for the first alternate is Frank Dicker. That's a one-year term. Second alternate position is open right now. Can I get a motion for that? Are there any council comments? Okay, can I get a motion for resolution 32-2014?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, resolution 33-2013, that's 2014. This is for the zoning board adjustment. There are presently 2 open seats on the zoning board. Both are for 4-year terms expiring December 31st, 2017. That is being filled, one of the 2 seats is being filled by Aaron Mifka. And then the second seat is going to remain vacant until we can come to some agreement. Can I get, with that in mind, can I get a motion for resolution 33-2014?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, so resolution 33-2014 passes. Those are the appointments. We still have a couple more to make. We'll be in touch with everybody who interviewed and applied for those positions. Next item on the agenda. Kathy, I'll get all this back to you.
No problem, thank you.
Next item on the agenda, executive session, resolution ES 121, 2014. First item related to litigation. We have to, right, we're moving back into it, got it. Related to litigation, negotiation, attorney-client privilege, NJAW, notice of demand change, it's 10-4-12B. Item number C, matters related to litigation, negotiations, and attorney-client privilege, Medford Cemetery Association, number 10-4-12B. Number D, letter D, matters relating to litigation, negotiations, and attorney-client privilege, NJ. Transportation Enhancement Funds, and that's FHWA 10-4-12B. Letter E, matters relating to the purchase, lease, or acquisition of real property or the investment of public funds, Bob Meyer Park / Public Works Garage, Rossi issue 10-4-12B. And F, matters relating to the employment relationship township manager performance review, and that is 10-4-12B. We will now move into executive session. Can I get a motion to move back into executive? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?